Hello, everyone. Thank you, Josh and Alex, for organizing this summit. My name is Rony Gao. I'm a conference interpreter, and my languages are Chinese and English. I'm currently based in Canada, but because my language pair is a very biactive language pair, like some of you, I've been doing simultaneous interpretation in this last year or so remotely, but also I find myself doing remote consecutive from time to time as well. Today, I'm going to walk you through some tricks and hacks. Hopefully, you'll all learn something new in terms of making our job easier when we are stuck at home. To begin with, when I look at what types of meetings I participate online, there are basically four broad categories. There's remote simultaneous interpretation, or RSI, which I'm sure you have all become familiar with and are learning even more about at this summit. And then there is remote consecutive, which I'm mainly talking about today, as well as a lot of classes. I attend classes both as a student and as a teacher. And in addition to that, there's everything else: group meetings, project meetings, webinars, and so on and so forth. When we think about it, it's not surprising that remote consecutive interpretation actually has a lot more in common with the other types of remote meetings than it does with RSI, for obvious reasons, because RSI is a very unique activity to do online. And that is to say that a lot of the ideas I'm presenting today are actually discovered or inspired by my experience doing these other types of meetings, whether teaching or learning or meeting online. And I'm sure some of these ideas that you take from this presentation can also be applied to your other types of meetings. Well, let's start with the basics. To get it right doing remote consec, you really need to have the 3 E's in place: an environment, hopefully soundproof, but at least quiet enough and undisturbed; the right equipment, well, that I'm sure you all know about: good computer, good internet speed. A USB headset is very essential, and you need to have the right weapon to fight your battles. The third E is etiquette, which to me means not only you should dress yourself professionally, because most likely when you're doing consec, interpreting your on camera, unlike RSI, but also there are things unique to the online world and remote meetings. For instance, you probably want to remind people to open their or turn on their microphone before they speak and mute themselves after they're done speaking. Things like that, I'm sure we've all become familiar with in the last year or so. But what's also unique about being the consecutive interpreter when attending an online meeting is sometimes you also need to take on a bit of a host's role or a moderator's role. To give you an example, let's say the conference organizer says, let's take a break for 10 minutes and come back at 8:15. Usually they're referring to their local time zone wherever they are located. But given the fact that we are all basically stuck at home and not traveling, it's very likely that the audience for whom you're interpreting are not in the same time zone. So if you know that they are located, let's say in Tokyo or Geneva or Beijing, you may want to interpret that as, let's take a break for 10 minutes and come back at 9:15 Beijing time. So doing that bit of conversion in addition to converting the language might be some extra service that we can bring to the table, given the fact that we are interpreting online. So that's broadly what I mean by etiquette. But there's more to it. Today, I want to get into some more tricks and hacks here and there to serve three purposes. One, help yourself become more productive. Two, present yourself in a more professional way when doing Consec interpreting remotely. And 3, to make your assignment less tiring. Well, let me dive into it. The first hack I'm going to share has to do with what I call a backup toolkit or emergency toolkit. This is a workstation that I set up for myself some time ago. And I want you to notice this little bag that is within an arm's reach from where I'm seated. The idea is if you're using these gadgets like chargers, earphone, USB drive, or adapters, or pens, so whatever you find yourself using during a consecutive assignment, you need to have a backup for it. And also here is a piece of cloth for my water bottle or glass, depending on if I'm drinking coffee or water. So again, it's important to make sure that it's within an arm's reach. Why? Because unlike RSI, where you can basically shift, you can take turns every 20 minutes. So you do get some legitimate break. With consecutive interpretation online, the meetings are pretty long. And unfortunately, sometimes you are doing the job by yourself. I do some of the consecutive interpretation assignments by myself. So that's when you're really at the mercy of the conference organizers. Well, some are, depending on the occasion, sometimes you can call a break or request a break. But in all likelihood, you may need some water in the middle of interpreting. So make sure that you have that, but also put a cushion or a piece of cloth underneath just so your cup or glass doesn't make the sound that gets picked up by your microphone. Speaking of backups, not only do we need backups for these physical gadgets, but I also think it's important to have a backup for the internet connection. In the most ideal world, of course, you want to have two Wi-Fi networks that are both working, but realistically, it's not going to happen for most of us. So what you can do, and I think this is one of the nice features that comes with Zoom specifically, is when you receive these meeting invitations, there's also these phone numbers. When I think about it, actually Zoom is very, very smart in offering this option so that in case you are interpreting a really important bilateral meeting, but somehow your internet is bad, or sometimes these things are just out of your control. Let's say you're being quarantined in a hotel room or something. You can't have control of the internet. Sometimes the router is down for a few minutes, but at least you want to take the phone numbers down, and they may come in handy when you need them. If your city is not listed here, what you want to do is to click this link at the bottom of that message, and it'll take you to a page where you have you can select your location and city and see what is the local number for you to dial in to that meeting. And this would be a good backup plan in case internet fails. Of course, it's not a perfect alternative, because if you dial in from a phone, you won't be able to have video, but at least it'll get you in there, back in that meeting when your internet somehow fails. The third hack is Post-it or sticky notes, stickers, whatever you want to call them. To be frank, before this pandemic, I was never a fan of using these sticky notes, because I felt they would be all over the place, and it's just not realistic. But now the physical environment has changed so much. I'm stuck at my workstation, my home office all day. And that comes with some perks, because now I can, I have just rediscovered the beauty of this invention, and I've been using it a lot when I do consecutive interpreting, because it's just really convenient. I write down new words in both languages. I can use different colors for different types of words, and I can basically, put them on the wall or around my my external monitor that I'm looking at. It's just really convenient. If you haven't, give it a try and see how it goes. Now, moving on, the next two hacks I'll talk about are intertwined. I'm going to highly recommend that anyone doing either teaching online or consecutive interpreting online get an external webcam. Avoid using the built-in camera that comes with your laptop. I know a lot of you are thinking, my computer, and usually it's a laptop nowadays, has a camera already. Why do I need an extra one? Well, for two reasons. One, with an external camera, it's up to you where to place it. You can, for instance, what I'm doing right now is I put it right above the monitor. So it's above my eye level, unlike this one. If I do a comparison, you'll know why it's so important. Now, this is how I look from my FaceTime camera that is on my MacBook Pro. Exactly the same physical environment, same lighting conditions, but because this camera is underneath my nose, I don't really look very professional. I look fatter, older, less professional. And some colleagues just put a few books underneath the laptop and make it higher. That will help somewhat, but it doesn't entirely solve the problem, because if you get an external camera like this one, you look much better. Now, in addition to using this camera, by the way, usually these external cameras are not that expensive, and they're really good at adjusting to low lighting conditions or weak lighting, to darker environment, and make sure that you don't look look dark. Now, next, let's talk about the virtual background. So first of all, if your lighting isn't great, or if the camera isn't great, virtual background simply won't work for you. Don't even use it if your head gets chopped off all the time. But the good thing about using an external webcam is then you can put up a virtual background like this one and look pretty decent. It makes you look more professional, in my opinion. And what I do when I interpret for a meeting consecutively is I self-made this little poster. I know it's not, I don't even have green screen. It's still not the best, but it makes a big difference in terms of basically claiming your own role as the interpreter, and others will appreciate how you make yourself easily identifiable as the interpreter. This is also what I do. So we all know that making eye contact is important, but it just feels so unnatural and so strange looking into that camera hole. And what I did for myself was I went on to Amazon to get some of these cardboards. I found this picture online, adjusted it to the right size, and used my home printer to print it out. I cut a hole around Obama's tie. That's actually the camera that I'm looking into, around Obama's tie. Well, of course, you can customize a portrait of your favorite friend, your favorite cartoon characters, and it'll just make this is just a way to trick your brain into thinking that you are actually talking to a real person. And then your eye contact will become a lot more natural. Mind you, though, don't go too far. I like this particular picture because Obama is smiling, and it makes me want to smile naturally. But don't go too far to the extent where you get a picture that's really goofy or hilarious that makes you want to burst into laughter uncontrollably when you're not supposed to. That won't, that'll backfire, in my opinion. Last but not least, this last hack is something I really wanted to show you. I was surprised that a lot of people didn't know about it. But I'm going to recommend separating your microphone from your speaker. And this is what I mean by that. Again, I'm taking the Zoom interface as an example, although I know that most online meeting platforms, including some of the browser-based WebRTC platforms, also support the same function. This is what a lot of people assume. They assume that if I want to use this USB microphone, I'll have to use it as my speaker. In other words, the sound will be coming through coming through the headset into my ear. And that's not necessarily true, because you do have the option to select a different output channel or output speaker. This is my preferred setting, the one on the right, so that my Sennheiser USB headset picks up what I'm saying. But when other meeting attendees, including those that I'm interpreting, speak, I hear them not through this, but through my computer sound. And it just makes my meetings much less tiring than otherwise, because you probably know that listening through a earphone for hours is going to be very, very exhausting. Now, some colleagues may worry that the sound will get picked up by the USB microphone and produce a feedback. Now, I promise it won't happen as long as your headset is a noise canceling one, like the one I'm using. Let me show you how I'm wearing it. In fact, I'm not even covering either ear. I'm just putting it around my head just so my microphone is placed at the right angle and the right distance from my mouth. Other than that, I'm actually I have my both ears open, listening through the computer output. This is what I do when I take classes or teach classes, and this is also what I do when I do online consecutive interpretation. Again, if you haven't, give it a try, and I'm sure it'll make a difference to your fatigue situation. So that's about it. I hope you found some of these ideas useful, and I'll be very happy to continue this conversation. If you have other tricks and hacks that I haven't covered, please share, and you have my contact information on the screen. I'll also see you around in this summit. To those of you who celebrate the Lunar New Year, I wish you a prosperous year of the ox. 祝大家牛年大吉，新春快乐. Thank you so much. See you around.